And if you have any questions, go ahead and send them to hello@joshuaentis.com. Okay, so I'm almost 60 and I don't see anyone my age in the movement, online, etc. Are there people my age and older out there, and what are they doing to take the message further? So great question, and one, it's amazing that you're out there being active for the animals. I think this is so important because what I've experienced with traveling the world and meeting thousands of activists from 21 different countries is that there are people of all ages out there fighting for the animals. I've had 7-year-olds doing outreach, 11-year-olds doing outreach, 16-year-olds going to vigils. I've marched with an 80-year-old. I've done outreach with a 60-year-old. There are people doing activism, doing outreach, doing cubes, doing vigils, leafleting, online stuff, Instagram, YouTube. All ages can do it and should be doing it because age doesn't justify our capability of being able to speak up for the animals. I think it might be tougher for someone of a certain age who might not know a lot about social media or technology, but we can always learn. Or you can do a different form of activism. So I see 60 plus year olds out on the streets, see 60 plus year olds going to slaughterhouses and bearing witness. I see 60 plus year olds doing outreach at a Cube of Truth. I see 60 plus year olds on Instagram, on YouTube. So really you can do anything I can do and anything a 16-year-old can do because we all have the capacity to speak up for the animals. And I think that's so powerful. But what I would recommend doing is, if you're on Instagram, searching some hashtags that might be niche to maybe 60 plus vegan, older vegans, vegan oldies, I don't know, looking at some hashtags that you can go and engage with people that are your age or higher or, or lower, somewhere around that. Joining Facebook groups. Maybe there's vegan parents, vegan grandparents that you can go to these groups and post things about there and try to recruit people and hang out with people that are your age and go out and do activism. Or just forget the age. This is my favorite. Forget that you're 60 plus. Remember that you have a voice and just go out and hang out with the 16-year-olds and the 30-year-olds and go be a voice for the animals. And also, go post in some of the larger vegan groups, Vegan Revolution, Vegan United, and say, hey, I'm a 60-plus-year-old vegan wanting to get active with some people my age. Are there anyone in this city or that city? And network. Networking is so big. So there's many ways that you can do, or there's many things that you can do to get out there and be active and to bring the message further. And you also, I think in your benefit, have more years of understanding what your skills and passions are, that you might be able to find a new niche for advocating for the animals. So just continue to push forward and understand that there are people out there of all ages. What do you say, or do you say anything to people in a non-cube situation who casually tell you about how they had chicken or other animals for their meal? I've been in many situations where I leave feeling like I could have said something to plant a seed, but I don't know what to say. For example, last week my teammate, college diver, told me about how she mostly eats chicken and I don't know how to respond. So that is an amazing question. I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of us go through our life in sort of non-stereotypical outreach conversations, like where we're not out doing activism, when we're with family, friends, coworkers, that sort of thing. And a lot of people casually bring that stuff up. Like the other night, someone was like, oh, I had a great hamburger the other day. Like I care. They forget that you're vegan and that you're devoting your life to fighting for the animals. But in this case, I think we have to be really mindful because we can either make a great conversation or have a really bad conversation by how we react to these statements. So if I was in your situation, what I would say to that is, have you eaten animals your whole life? Have you eaten chicken your whole life? Obviously, it's kind of a rhetorical question. You understand what their answer is going to be. And they're going to be like, yeah. And be like, well, cool. I used to eat chicken as well a lot. And as you know, I'm vegan now. I'm just curious, have you ever thought about the life of the animal before they got to your plate, before they had their life taken from them? Have you ever thought about that before? And see what they say to that, because most of the time they're gonna be like, no, I really haven't thought about that. And be like, you know what, I didn't think about that as well before I went vegan. I used to consume chicken, hamburgers, steak without thinking about the animal's life before they were killed. And this got me thinking, have you ever thought about veganism? And what are your thoughts on veganism? This is a good way to open up that conversation, so you're at least coming from a place of understanding. You're coming from a place of non-judgment. They're not feeling judged because you put yourself in their shoes. And I love to ask that question, like, what are your thoughts about veganism? Have you ever thought about it yourself? Most of the time they're gonna be like, no, I love chicken too much and this and that. And in that case, then you can say, well, do you know what happens to the chickens? Like, I know you love eating chicken, but have you ever thought about what happens to them? How they're raised, how they're treated, how they're killed? And then this will open up into the outreach conversation. You know, you can always start it this way if you have time to have a full-on outreach conversation, or you can just put hints and little bits of questions in there so you can sort of work them slowly, if that makes sense. If you feel like you should speak up, you should. We should always be speaking up, but you gotta be mindful of there is a right time and a place and what questions you ask and how you approach it. So I think it's really good to just ask them questions in this case so that you can understand where they're coming from. How much would you recommend to save up before becoming a full-time activist? Great question, Jason. I would definitely recommend just budgeting, putting down, creating an Excel spreadsheet, and first figuring out the length of time. How long are you going to be traveling for? How long are you going to be a full-time activist? Are you going to have a job on the side online that gives you some money coming in? Is it going to be a year, 6 months, 3 months, 1 month? Figure out the time. Then think, go a step further. How am I going to get transported to those places? Or what transportation am I going to need? Flights, trains, buses, cars? Are you going to do it in a van? And start figuring out these costs. Because I'm going to be making a video that's going to talk a little bit more about what I did before my year of travel. But I would figure out this budget for you, because you might travel differently than I do. You might be hosted more than this person. You might be a budget eater, a budget shopper. And like, for example, I don't drink alcohol. I don't really buy anything extracurricular. I just travel, eat food, and I'm hosted places, so I spend a lot less than most people. So I would figure out these numbers. What are your goals? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations from your tour? And then start creating like a little budget for that. And I would say, to be safe, figure out what it would cost for you to be able to sustain yourself and just come out even. How much would it cost for you to eat 3 meals a day, sleep, and travel? I found that my magic number would be like $1,500 US. So if you can find a way to have $1,500 US, you'd probably be able to travel the world if you have some hosts here and there for $1,500 a month. And that's just a base sort of level. I know people who could do that for under that. I know people who currently do that for under 1,000. So you just got to find out what your needs and what your wants are when you become a full-time activist, what you're going to be doing, because you might just be staying in your city and doing a full-time activist. Being a full-time activist, it's going to cost a lot less money than traveling to 21 countries. And I'm more than happy to chat with you about that if you have any more questions.